from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdés, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdés.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdés, Valdés with an S, at Rich Valdés on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of the program. We are live and national, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Happy to be here, super blessed to be on this microphone with you all. Here's the number, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And justice has been served in America. James Comey indicted today on 2 counts. One of making a false statement, perjury, lying to the United States Senate, and of course, obstructing the Senate's investigation, which is why he lied. Now, I don't know. I can't necessarily predict what's going to happen. I know that historically, we've had some issues with getting indictments or getting indictments to turn into convictions, or even getting convictions to stick. Right? Think about Kevin Kleinsmith and others that were involved in Russiagate. Not a whole lot of accountability there. And not because of a lack of trying, per se, right? Or exposing, but because of a lack of fair people in the jurisdiction, surrounding Washington, D.C. So different venue here for this. I don't know if it's any better, quite frankly. I know they just fired the last prosecutor. But either way, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. I also don't want to sell anybody any false hope, right? You guys know I have people in my circle that eat up the Q, Anon stuff and all of that. And, since 2017, I have been hearing that the bad guys are going to be all arrested en masse, and this mass arrest will be conducted by the United States military, and they're going to alert the United States with the emergency broadcast system, the EBS, this is just a test. But if it wasn't a test, that type of thing. And it's just, I laugh because since 2017, I've been arguing till I'm blue in the face with people that are close to me, saying that's not going to happen. I have people in my circle who believe that Joe Biden was, and not the way Trump says it, right? Like, that there was the auto pen was the president, not Biden. But there are some people that believe that Biden did not serve as president of the United States. In fact, that Trump has been president the whole time. And again, what America do you live in when we can have this super clandestine operation, where we can have that level of that lack, I should say, of transparency from the United States, right? That would be, I don't know, anti-American. Now, I'm not saying that we're saints either, but I'm just saying you can't, at some point you have to intellectually just draw the line. Anyway, I went on a tangent there. That's for my brother. But the bottom line here is James Comey. What type of trouble do you get in for, I believe this is a Section 1001 violation. What type of trouble do you get into for that type of thing? I know I used to work with a guy, James O'Keefe. I like to call him O'Kizzle my nizzle. And O'Keefe got a Section 1001 violation way back when. It was a federal misdemeanor for him. It was not a felony. This is a felony. So that's a little elevated. It didn't come with any jail time. I don't know if this is going to come with any jail time. I don't even know if he's going to be convicted of it. I don't even know if both charges are going to stick or if he's just going to get charged with the one. At this point, I would be very curious to know what happens at the end of this. Will he keep his law license or not? Right? Is he going to get disbarred or not? Very curious. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, we've seen this stuff before, and I'm grateful for the steps that we're taking to hold people accountable. My hope is that we'll get a lot more moving forward. Anyway, I want you to hear the clip from the Fox News channel of this breaking news story from a few hours ago, James Comey getting indicted.
Welcome back. Breaking right now. Tonight, a major update to a story we brought to you earlier in the hour. A grand jury has just handed down an indictment for former FBI Director James Comey. The Justice Department accuses Comey of lying to Congress while under oath back in 2020. Let's bring in David Spunt with all the breaking details. David, what can you tell us?
Well, Jillian, we are waiting to get the actual details of the indictment. We're just told that an indictment has been handed up against the former FBI Director James Comey. So I don't want to speculate on the actual charges yet until I see the paper in hand. That's the only responsible thing to do. But we know that James Comey, the former FBI Director, has been indicted. We're waiting to see if there's any sort of comment from the Justice Department.
All right. So again, I don't know if you guys could hear that. I could barely hear that audio, so forgive me if you weren't able to hear it. But the gist of it is we haven't heard much. President Trump did release a statement saying that this is good. This is a good step. And listen, I agree with that 100%. You know, I'm a little skeptical, not at President Trump and not at his intentions, and not at the Department of Justice. I'm skeptical at the potential jury pool, at the people that live in the swamp and the suburbs of the swamp. That's where my fear is. But anyway, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about a bunch of things that are facing America from the national security perspective. We've also got plenty to discuss. Yesterday, we saw this third attack in Texas and on ICE or Border Patrol. And it seems to be open season, yet the Democrats, they don't care, right? They don't care. They're going to continue this this rhetorical phenomena of just demonizing ICE, calling them kidnappers, saying they're disappearing people. The Democrats, if they're good at one thing, it's that. It's spreading propaganda. It's branding the other side like they're the worst thing ever. And, when you push back, then they're going to say you're doing the same thing to them, right? But when was the last time that you saw a Republican really criticizing Democrats for something other than what they've done or their policies? I don't get on the radio and say they're fascists, they're terrible, right? I talk about what they've done, and it's just such a sad state of affairs. Really is that you've got people that truly believe this stuff now, and I don't know how far gone we are, but we're going to continue to talk about national security. We're going to talk about counterterrorism, and I'm hoping that we can get the deputy assistant to the president on the line, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, out of the White House. Let's see if we can get him on the phone, and I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
It seems like an indictment of James Comey is imminent. Would this be the first step in accountability for pushing the hoax of Russia, along with Barack Obama involved as well?
Well, I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know. You have very professional people headed up by the Attorney General and Todd Blanche and Lindsay Halligan, who's very smart, good lawyer, very good lawyer. They're going to make a determination. I'm not making that determination. I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I don't really choose to do so. I can only say that Comey's a bad person. He's a sick person. I think he's a sick guy, actually. He did terrible things at the FBI. And but I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen.
That, of course, President Trump in the White House prior to the actual indictment of James Comey, which came forth a little while ago, a couple hours back. And I want to get some reaction to that and what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on domestically with all of the domestic terror we're seeing, this big rise of left-wing terror. But first, I want to talk about James Comey and this indictment with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to the President, Senior Director of the Counterterrorism Office in the National Security Council. Dr. Gorka, welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
You bet. let's talk about this. I think this is a great step towards accountability. I'm hopeful that it'll stick. Your thoughts?
Well, as Comey liked to post on social media, no one is above the law, and that includes him, the most corrupt director of the FBI since it was created, a man who was central to Brennan's Russia hoax built on the Christopher Steele propaganda dossier that was funded to the tune of $12 million by Hillary Clinton, an individual who we know perjured himself in front of the Senate when he lied about leaking classified documents to his friends so they could be published in the Washington Post. So I agree with James Comey. Nobody is above the law, and now we're going to see how this man is judged by a jury of his peers for swearing the oath he took as an FBI agent and a director, and let the American people do justice.
Dr. Gorka, I think a lot of people have been waiting to see individuals like him and General Clapper and former Director Brennan and even John Bolton and others that have done whatever they felt like doing and playing dumb. I'm going to use that term, and it seems like this is the beginning of not retribution, as the left would put it, but of accountability. And my thinking is I'm grateful for it. I'm hopeful that this jury of his peers that you're talking about will actually be able to do their job. What are your thoughts, if any, on the venue, this Virginia, and being somewhat outside D.C.? Does that improve the situation, or should we expect more swamp shenanigans?
Well, we do know that the cesspit that is Washington, D.C. voted 93% for Hillary Clinton and 92% for Joe Biden. So it is a one-party town. I think that is improved by where the grand jury is sitting and deciding, and where this court case will be actually held. But let's trust the American people. Let's trust that we can rip politics out of the judicial system, because far too many people have suffered, not least the president himself, people who worked for him, like Peter Navarro and many others, and Mike Flynn. So now it's time to restore a sense of justice to the American people, and for them to believe that Lady Justice does, in fact, wear a blindfold.
Well, amen to that. Now, Dr. G, your forte is in national security and counterterrorism, and yesterday, of all places, I saw an article about the rise of left-wing violence in America in the Atlantic. And I thought to myself, if the Atlantic is talking about the rise of left-wing extremism and violence in America, surely we have a problem. Your thoughts?
I really don't care to comment on the Atlantic. There are a bunch of left-wing propagandists. It was a semi-decent rag about 30 years ago, and now it's basically just a bunch of hack liars for the Democrat Party. So it's inconsequential what they write. I don't care about the Atlantic. I care about my friend Charlie Kirk being assassinated and leaving a widow and two young children without a father. I care about the fact that a colleague of mine in the White House, as of yesterday, has to have a security detail because of the threats upon her life and on her husband's life. So the left have normalized violence, from Obama to Eric Holder to Maxine Waters to Joe Biden, and not one of them has apologized or attempted to rein in their foot soldiers after the death of Charlie Kirk. So I couldn't care less about what the Atlantic says, really.
Well, I'll join you in that. I think the direction I'm really going in is in this. They're calling it out, but I think we've been calling it out for even longer, and we see it often. Obviously, I would say the peak of it with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which is terrible. But we also see this 1,000% increase on ICE officers that are, now obscuring their identities for their own safety and the safety of their families from getting doxxed. Do you, from your perch, on the National Security Council, do you see this getting better, or is it continuing to smolder?
Look, we will do what has to be done. We have Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Governor Noem, Tom Homan, Stephen Miller. These individuals are forces of nature. They are dedicated to justice and truth. They will do what has to be done to reset the balance. At the end of the day, people are going to have to be arrested, prosecuted, and go to prison for acts of violence and for incitement to violence. What I pray for, and I say this as a cradle conservative, we have to find a sane Democrat who can lead this cult of a party that has an utter contempt for the Constitution back to some semblance of normalcy. But right now there is nobody. It's not Chuck Schumer. It's not Hakeem Jeffries. It's not AOC. It's not anyone in the mainstream lying legacy media. Not one of them. I mean, you look at this Jimmy Kimmel incident, and you realize nothing has changed since Charlie Kirk was assassinated live on camera. Nothing. The left has done nothing to distance itself from those who have charged the atmosphere. I mean, look, my former Salem colleague made this eloquent point years ago. When you spend nigh on a decade calling President Trump a Nazi and everybody who worked for him and everybody who supported him, what do you expect? Sooner or later, somebody will say, oh, really, they're Nazis? Well, Hitler was bad and he deserved to die, so maybe we should kill anybody wearing a red MAGA hat. That's why Charlie died, because the Democrat Party and the mainstream legacy media have said for years that people like me and President Trump and Stephen Miller and Caroline Leavitt are fascists. So until the left jettisons that verbiage, people will simply have to be arrested and prosecuted and thrown in prison for committing crimes for political purposes.
Well, I think we've made a lot of progress from saying that the left saying that Antifa was an idea to actually now we have an administration with the courage to label them a terrorist organization. Would you agree? Absolutely. And Antifa is a terrorist organization. It goes without saying. They are terrorists. They are a political organization that justifies the use of violence to target those that they disagree with. That is the definition of terrorism. Amen to that. Amigos, we're on with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to the President, Donald J. Trump, and Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council. And Dr. G, I'm told that you've been in the Middle East recently, and President Trump addressing many leaders from the Middle East and leaders from all over the world at the UN a couple of days ago, as well as receiving some Middle East leaders in the White House. So I want to get your take on that, as well as a couple other things. So please stick with me. And familia, we're coming right back with Dr. Sebastian Gorka from the White House and your calls, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
I'd like to have him stop buying any oil from Russia while Russia continues this rampage against Ukraine. And they've been fighting. They've lost millions of lives already. And for what? For what? It's disgraceful. And I said yesterday Let it keep going because their economy is absolutely terrible right now. And I think it's a shame that they're doing that, killing a lot of people unnecessarily.
That's President Trump in the Oval Office with Turkish President Erdogan, and not only beseeching them to stop buying oil from Russia, but also signaling that there's a closeness to a deal with Hamas and Israel. And I want to get not only a take on that, but a take on really everything. There's so much geopolitical stuff going on this week that with respect to national security. With our guest, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. G is Deputy Assistant to the President, Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council, and he's with us now. Dr. G, I know that you were in the Middle East not that long ago and have a firm grip on this stuff. Talk to me about the visit with President Erdogan and your thoughts on the larger topics.
Well, I was in the Oval Office with the president after the visit, and he said it couldn't have gone better. I was there with my immediate boss, the acting National Security Advisor and Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. So it's an important nation. It's a geopolitically significant one on the liminal dividing line between Europe and Asia, the largest armed forces in NATO on the European continent outside of the United States, and has a very significant role to play in various issues, not the least of which is the stabilization of Syria. So President Trump made that historic decision to recognize and lower sanctions for the time being against the new regime in Damascus, and Turkey, along with Israel, along with Saudi Arabia, can have a pivotal role in finally stabilizing that benighted country after the fall of the Assad regime. So an incredible successful meeting. As to the broader context, let's just be very clear. There has never been, since the founding of the Republic, a president like the current commander-in-chief, my ultimate boss, President Trump. Every month, a new peace deal. Intractable conflicts such as Armenia, Azerbaijan, such as Rwanda and the DRC. One peace deal per month. If you do one deal like that in a 4-year span as president, that's pretty impressive. We've had 7 to date, and he will be the man to bring peace to the war in Ukraine and to the conflict in Gaza. There is no other man that can do it. So, I don't know if he's got room for 9 Nobel Peace Prizes in the Oval Office, but he deserves it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I thought it was really remarkable that even critics of his, like the Secretary General of the UN, making a mention of that, saying that it was really quite noteworthy that the president has had this level of success with peace deals. So on that front, I know that there's a lot of moving parts. You just talked about a successful meeting with Erdogan. There's times in recent history where Erdogan wasn't somebody that I think the United States was always super friendly with, and there's been times of tension and whatnot. And now you have a new president in Syria, al-Jilani, who used to be al-Jilani and now is I'm forgetting his new name. Forgive me, but yes, correct. And there's a lot of critique on, dealing with people that were once in a different position of power. And I understand it from the political perspective of this is, you deal with the cards that you have. But for those that are listening that are saying, what's going on? It's crazy that we're having these types of discussions with these people. What do you say to that?
I say you're an idiot. You don't have to like somebody to talk to them. Biden refused to talk to Putin, right. And what happened? Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and young Russians died. You don't have to like Kim to talk to him, but if you talk to him, you can maybe get... I was there for the peace deal in Singapore when the president managed to get that dictatorship to stop launching ballistic missiles over the Sea of Japan and to test nuclear weapons. The president has one goal above all else, to bring peace to the world. That is his priority, to stop what he has rightly called the meat grinder in Ukraine, the meat grinder in Gaza. You can't end wars unless you're prepared to talk to people. We don't have the option of dropping nuclear bombs as we did at the end of World War II. The president isn't interested in war for the sake of war. He's the opposite of the former Trotskyite neoconservatives of the Bush administration. As a result, he recognized regimes that may be illegitimate, but he's prepared to talk to them in the interest of stopping the bloodshed. That's the point. Stopping the bloodshed.
Amen to that. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, ultimately, I think this message that President Trump sent to the United Nations was very, very effective, despite the elevator, despite the teleprompter. What, from your perspective, right, being in the West Wing and dealing with the people you deal with on a daily basis, what has been the reaction that you've seen from your perspective?
Well, first, I would, tell all of your listeners, I was in my skiff in my classified information facility with my team when we saw that image of the president come up on the screen yesterday, and I said, okay, instead of this meeting we're holding with my counterterrorism team, we're going to turn up the volume and we're going to watch it. And it was an absolute tour de force, 13 topics. Mm-hmm. Covered by the president, starting with Iran, going all the way through the environmental, global warming, green scam, and everybody needs to watch that speech and then to read the transcript of it at whitehouse.gov, because it explains everything that we are doing. The president believes in sovereignty and in the practice of Westphalian nation states that have borders, that control their territory and want to work together with America. And his message is very simple. We're not isolationists, nor are we interventionists. But if you want to work with us, whether you're Rwanda, Syria, Belgium, the UK, it doesn't really matter. If you want to work with us, if you want to prosper together, the door is open. If you are threatening us, if you threaten peace and stability, we will come down on you like the hammers of hell, like we did with that beautiful Operation Midnight Hammer. But we are here for prosperity and peace. Now is a time for choosing for all the capitals of the world.
Let's make a deal. It's a time for choosing. So well put, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. I want to thank you for joining us, because I appreciate your perspective, and more than anything, your voice, right? You've got, I'm sure you hear that a lot. You've got such a, not only a good radio voice, just a great, so distinct, right? I'm going to have to work on my own.
Well, it makes me sound smart, right?
Yes, it's very smart.
That's what they say.
That's great. Dr. G, again, thanks. Deputy Assistant to the President, Senior Director of Counterterrorism, and at the National Security Council. Godspeed to you. Keep up the good work. Talk to you again soon.
That's the plan. God bless you, Rich, and all your listeners.
Amen. Thank you. And amigos, we come back with your thoughts, your calls. We talk about the threats that are presented to America, the opportunities that are presented to America, and everything else in between. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdés with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdés with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdés. Looking forward to your calls. I'm going to get to you momentarily. I see the calls are stacking up, and I'm going to get there, I promise. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. But a couple things I want to talk about first. Number one, It's always a real pleasure to talk to Dr. Sebastian Gorka. I'm practicing my Gorka. He's right. It does make you sound smarter. He does it better than me, though, obviously, because he's the real Dr. G. But I'm going to keep working on my Gorka. And, I appreciate the conversation because he's one of those guys out there that keeps his eye on the threat. And there are a number of threats that are out there. I remember in 2016, he'd written a book about eliminating the jihadist threat against America. Think about that. Almost a decade ago. Talk about being prescient. And the threats that face us, they're all over. We're seeing a similar threat in New York City. And I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that these are actual threats against the country, and it doesn't mean it's an attack, right? We don't have to retaliate, but we do have to respond to the threat, and we have to make sure that we're protected against these threats and insulated, if you will. And in addition to those threats, there's other ones, right? Just things that we deal with on a regular day-to-day basis. You talk about those funny phone calls that you get where they try to check your geolocation or there's nobody at the other end, all these spam robot calls that we all get, telemarketing and all that stuff. And that's just the beginning of it. What about the Nigerian prince? What about all these other scams that are out there? If you want to live a better digital life, I know I do, you got to hook up with these people that gave me this package. And my friends at WebRoot, this data breach package they've given me is fantastic. Let me tell you about it because, again, when we talked about this credit reporting agency that had a data breach affecting over 4 million people, it sounded off the alarms for me. And this is a prime example of why it's so important to have products like WebRoot Total Protection. This plan, it gives you antivirus protection. It protects you against emerging threats like malware and ransomware and phishing scams. But it also gives you identity protection for up to 10 identities. So if you got a big family, this is a good look for you. Plus VPN, cloud backup, and a couple other things. The plan also includes up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement. So you're covered for up to $1 million if you get scammed with this WebRoot Total Protection plan. You also get 24/7 U.S.-based customer support and an elder fraud hotline. And, they're always going after, the elder folks in our families. That's just how it is because they're trusting. And there's also identity monitoring and dark web monitoring. So it's all part of this all-in-one suite, if you will, this all-in-one product with plans for individuals and for families. WebRoot gives me the peace of mind to live a better digital life. And I think you should let WebRoot Total Protection give you and your family peace of mind in the same way because we have these evolving digital threats, and there's really only one way to protect yourself against them. So go to the website, check it out. You get 50% off if you use the code I'm about to give you. It's 50% off the WebRoot Total Protection package or the WebRoot Essentials package if you like. Just go to webroot.com/rich. That's my name. WebRoot, WebRoot.com/RICH, webroot.com/rich. Now, once you've done that, I want you to pick up the phone and give me a call. 1-800-8, no, it's not 1-800, that's Mark Levin's number. 833-482-5337, 833 for Valdés. And I want to go to our friend Paul. Paul calls us from Boise, Idaho. He's very faithful, and he's on the line with us right now, locked in on line number 1. Paul, go right ahead.
Yeah, Dr. G, he really has a distinctive voice. Yeah.
Of course, Paul.
We were talking yesterday about passing the buck.
Yeah.
And it's actually called continuing resolution. And it's just going to continue to go around and around and around. And whoever's got the most seats in the House gets suspended. That's the way I kind of see it. I hate to see it that way, but it's been time and time again. So when I hear continuing resolution, I hear that you're going to have some haves and some have-nots. And the last administration, they had $7 trillion worth of haves, and we had nothing to show for it. So I'm not too trusting of them. As far as Comey is concerned, Comey deserves he deserves whatever he gets.
Right. I think honestly, I hope that he gets more. I hope whatever he gets. You're right. I think he deserves that and more. Right. Sadly, I feel like when you have crooks that are that are from the other side, right? Dirty cops like James Comey, former FBI director. These guys know how to break the law way different than your average criminal, right? Way different and better than your average deep stater. So it's, like I knew a politician that once said, he was quoting somebody else, but it was always funny when he said it. He said, it's like trying to nail Jell-O to a tree. and it really is. And I guess the little bit of time that I spent in government taught me that lesson. And I realized, man, it's tough. It's tough to get these guys. They know what they're doing. They know how to do it. They're experts at doing it. And I think Dr. Gorka provided a little bit of hope and a little clarity there on hopefully this will go a little bit smoother than we've seen it go in the past. But I think you're right. Now, as far as the continuing resolution, I think, this is a rock and a hard place scenario, right? You can become a hardliner and say, no, that's it. We're going to cut spending or shut everything down. We're not playing that game and grind everything to a halt. The problem is there's a PR fallout with that you can likely lose because we don't have, I feel, we don't have the numbers to do it. If we did, then we would do it, right? And we would be able to pull it off. So my hope is that we keep the government open. If we weren't, then we should be selling the idea that it's a great thing. And that's what I would do. If I were in Congress, I'd be beating my chest all day long. Hey, Congressman, what's your name? What do you think about whatever? And I'd say, you know what my name is? Shut down the government. Shut it down. Shut it down. Shut it down. Let's shut it down for 6 months. Let's shut it down for 9 months. I would be pushing this and trying to get people on board with the idea of shutting down the government so that we get used to a shutdown government. Because ultimately, you know what? You and me, we're not going to be harmed the way the government class gets harmed when they shut down the government. They live off of that. We don't live off of that. And I think that's that's their mother's milk, not mine. And ultimately, that's I guess the place we've got to get to stop our spending disease that we have. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later, Paul. President Trump gave a ringing endorsement to Argentinian President Javier Milei. And Javier Milei's facing some of these same economic challenges in his country. He's doing the right thing, and he's cutting, he's slashing, and he's stopping the spending as best he can. And it scares people. People get scared because, you start to lose people, and they're like, oh, snap, my government job is going away. You got to grin and bear it, right? Not everybody works for the government. I'd say most people don't. And you got to look out for those most people, right? Anyway, government of, for, and by the people. Paul, thanks for your call. Amigos, coming right back. Rich Valdés.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdés with you all night long, or most of the night long. Anyway, so much going on. Honestly, I got into a sidebar discussion during the break about spending and political philosophy versus what happens in Washington, right? And I guess, maybe you can call me soft, or maybe you can call me nuanced. I believe that the men and women that are in Congress are faced with this every day. They have their convictions that we all want to live by, what we believe and what we think is right. And then you also have to live by making sure you're there again tomorrow to fight. And that's a balancing act, right? It really is. You've got Democrats that are out to get you that you may have to cut a deal with. You've got your own party that could be out to get you that you have to cut a deal with. If you want to get something out of committee, you might have to make a deal with the chairman of that committee. There's so many intricate pieces of how our government works. And it's easy for me to get on this microphone to say, stop spending, cut spending. But it becomes a little more nuanced when you're in the trenches like the people in Congress or like President Trump. Anyway, amigos, the music means I got to go, but I'm back for more whenever I can. Hasta la próxima. Take care. God bless. I'm Rich Valdés.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdés, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdés.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdés, Valdés with an S, at Rich Valdés on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour, this Thursday night edition of the program, live and national, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Happy to be here, truly blessed. I like to say super blessed to be here with you. The phone number, if you want to join me, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdés. And James Comey has spoken. Now, if you haven't heard by now, James Comey, former director of the FBI, was indicted on 2 charges, one for making a false statement and one for obstructing justice. The statement was made to the United States Senate. He was being grilled by the amazingly talented Senator Ted Cruz and caught him in a lie. Caught him in a lie like Ted Cruz does. A fantastic jurist, fantastic senator, an amazing patriot. And of course, because he lied, they're saying that this was, in effect, obstruction. And James Comey has, in fact, responded, putting a message out on his social media. And we're going to get that response in a couple of minutes, as well as some reaction from President Trump's former attorney, Christina Bobb, who herself is still a criminal defendant in one of the matters where her and Rudy Giuliani and a bunch of other people, including President Trump, were all indicted in Georgia, right? So she's going to be joining us to give us the scoop on what's happening here from the legal perspective. And I want you to hear this clip about the Comey news. Check this out.
All right, we are following breaking news. CBS has learned the Department of Justice has indicted former FBI Director James Comey. Prosecutors have indicted Comey on 2 counts. Details about those charges are forthcoming. For now, though, let's bring in CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rosen. He joins us on the phone here. And we're also looking at, Jake, a post here from Attorney General Pam Bondi.
I'll play the rest of that a little bit later, maybe at the bottom of the hour. But I just wanted you to get a flavor of what's going on again. Former FBI Director James Comey being indicted for lying to the United States Senate and for obstructing their investigation to what was going on. And again, small price to pay for all the stuff this guy's done, right? I mean, this guy took it upon himself to do a number of things, not just a Russia, and the way he ran the FBI as if it were some sort of domestic CIA, spying on President Trump's campaign staff, spying on President Trump, and all the rest of the stuff he's done. But I'm happy to see somebody being held accountable for something, right? I really am. I'm happy to see it. This is a balance that we have to always maintain, right? The left is always going to try to make sure that you are positioned as the bad guy. They want to make sure you're the bad guy. They want to make sure that they're projecting their malfeasance onto you. So Trump runs for president. They say, we're going to indict this guy. Then not only do they, go after him and try and put him in jail for 400 years, but then they start saying if he wins, he's going to say that we're his political enemy. He's going to put us all in jail. He's a fascist. When in reality, it was them breaking the rules. Like Letitia James, she's another one expected to be indicted. As I hear it, I hear John Bolton is going to get indicted. Letitia James may get indicted. General Clapper and John Brennan. No, I don't know if the intelligence guys are going to get it. I don't know. I would bet that they are smart enough to say, come on, guys, you don't want me. You really want, and they're going to give somebody else. It just makes sense to me. They're Washington bureaucrats, right? General James Clapper had a whole career in the military before he became one of the top intelligence people in the Obama administration. So we'll see. We'll see what the good general brings to the table, as well as former Director Brennan. By the way, tidbit, I say this all the time, but I just always find it so eerie. I went to North Bergen High School, and you know who else is from North Bergen? John Brennan. John Brennan is from North Bergen, New Jersey. And I always thought that was kind of gross, if you will, because he was, I don't know, was a campaign manager to Gus Hall? Is that how that worked out? If anybody wants to fact check me on that. But Gus Hall, again, Communist Party USA. How does somebody like that end up becoming the CIA director later in life, right? I mean, come on. Anyway, I'm going to get into all of that stuff in a little bit. But this James Comey stuff, just hopefully scratching the surface, right? I hope that something good comes of it. My questions for our guest are going to be, is he going to see jail time? Right? Because I said this before, but I'll share it again. My former employer, James O'Keefe, O'Kizzle my nizzle, he was once indicted and arrested and convicted of a Section 1001 violation, right? Federal law, making a false statement. Now, his was a federal misdemeanor. It wasn't a felony. And that was eventually pardoned. But the charge against Comey is a felony. So I'm just wondering, does this one carry jail time, or is it just like federal probation? And just interesting stuff. Interesting stuff here. I'm going to ask lots of questions because, again, even if we get a conviction on Comey, what does that mean? Is he just going to say, all right, yeah, now I'm going to be guilty? Throw the book at me. What does that book look like? That's really the question. I don't think it involves a perp walk. I don't think it involves handcuffs. I don't think it involves jail time. And I hope Christina Bobb says, Rich, you are so hopelessly wrong. He's going to be perp walked. He's going to be in an orange jumpsuit. He's going to be behind bars. I don't know. I'm just looking for justice, and I hope that we find it here. This is definitely a step in the right direction. So anyway, straight ahead, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna connect with a former Trump attorney. Christina Bobb is scheduled to join us in a little bit, and of course, your calls, your thoughts, your reactions, your opinions on what's going on with James Comey. Is this it, right? Is this the justice you were looking for? Is this the beginning? Is this the first domino to fall? Or are you skeptical? Do you think that it doesn't go far enough? Either way, I want to hear your thoughts on this. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdés. And again, I want to encourage you to call in. I know there's a lot of people when I'm out and about, and I try to be out and about a lot. I like nightlife. I like social events. I try to go out as much as I can. And I can tell you, when I meet listeners, and I met some just recently when I was at an event in Manhattan, they always have lots of different things to say. And I tell them all the same thing because they say, oh, I want to call one of these days. And I think, well, what's stopping you? And I think a lot of people are just embarrassed, or they're shy, or they're this or they're that. I want to encourage you, if you've never called this program before, today is the day you want to call. I want to hear from you, in particular on this topic, because it adds a lot of color to the conversation when people from all over the country and different parts of America chime in on this discussion. And again, the question is, James Comey, former director of the FBI, has been indicted. What say you? Did it go far enough? Are you happy with this result? Are you displeased with this result? Does it matter to you at all? Did you know any of these things that he'd done? I'm always curious to see the American public's reaction. Again, I am happy that this is happening. This is justice, in my opinion, and that's what we're all about. So keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdés.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump. but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
Keep the faith, says James Comey. Again, that's James Comey, the really, really, really tall guy who was at the FBI, who got involved and read a memo right before Election Day with respect to Hillary Clinton's servers. I mean, this guy is a wild cat. And that's him. That's a statement that he just released on his social media, I don't know, an hour and a half ago or something like that. And I want to get reaction to that from our guest. Our guest is President Trump's former attorney. She was the attorney on deck when the Mar-a-Lago raid went down. Christina Bobb is with us. She is the author of the book Defiant: Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. Christina Bobb, your reaction to James Comey's indictment and his subsequent soliloquy.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. Well, I'm thrilled with the indictment. It took long enough, but we got it, which is great. I'm so proud of Lindsay Halligan, who finally made it happen. The U.S. Attorney, as of yesterday, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. I think his reaction is weird. Everything he does, I don't know if it's just because I don't know what his deal is, but he comes across as very weird to me.
Like sociopathy?
Maybe that's what it is. Everything is disingenuous. Everything is a facade trying to, manipulate people into seeing things a certain way. And I thought his emotions didn't match the significance of what was happening. He either doesn't believe he's going to be found guilty because, he can always get out of everything, or he's like crazy. I mean, he's been indicted with 2 federal felonies. That's significant. You would think he wouldn't sound like he was reading poetry, at a coffee.
Yeah, I think most people would be concerned about 2 federal felonies, and let alone former FBI director, right? And he's not an old man, so you got to think he's got to work somewhere, and he can write books or teach or something. But this is a little bit of a black cloud, no?
It is. Honestly, I think the whole thing is very, very weird. It's almost like the 2 camps, both Democrats and Republicans, because I have been indicted. I'm currently a criminal defendant as we speak. And it's, what it is?
How does that make you feel, Christina Bobb? How do you feel about this indictment?
About mine or his?
Yours.
Oh, no, mine was so unfair and egregious. It's actually been thrown out. The case is still open, but there's no valid indictment anymore. It was a complete violation of my constitutional rights. The court even said that. But
is that, just for FYI, is that you and everybody else?
Yes, everybody in my case the indictment has been thrown out. They have left the case open to give the Attorney General a chance to appeal, which her appeal was just denied earlier this week.
Oh, good.
So she either has to reopen the grand jury or the case gets dismissed. She's insane. This is the Arizona Attorney General, so who knows what the heck she's going to do. But she's losing every battle, so I don't know if she's just going to cut her losses or be crazy and keep trying. But either way, I don't think she's going to get very far. But
got it. But yeah, and I only asked because I know that you've been on this program before and in the media at large and written a book about all this stuff, and you've been pretty vocal about how you think this is wrong. Yeah. And you're right. I think it's a very interesting remark. James Comey seems like, we've always known this was going to happen, and he's so flippant.
Yeah, it's very weird. He seems very disconnected, and it's really the downfall of our justice system on both sides, and it's all because of the left abusing their position, targeting their political opponents, because now nobody respects indictments anymore. Like, I have my mugshot framed in the background of, when I'm doing media hits. I'm like, hey, I'm a warrior because I got indicted for working with Rudy
street
Giuliani.
Cred now.
It's street cred now, which, maybe I'm playing into it, but we should be scared of indictments. That's part of the deterrent factor, right? When people no longer fear getting indicted, it's no longer a deterrent. Crime is going to skyrocket. And it's all coming from the left's abuse of the system. And Comey's weird little, I don't know what the heck that was, his little performance. I think it's just really devastating to our justice system.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, Christina Bobb, tell me a little bit about, I'm going to give you some analysis, right? This is just my gut reaction. I'm not the lawyer here, you are. But I look at this and I say, all right, so you've got 2 federal felonies. I don't know if those, I'm sure they can carry a jail time. I don't know if they're going to carry jail time. And what do you think the likelihood of both of them sticking is? Let's say they get them on the perjury. Yeah. Are they going to get both, or do you think they'll throw out one and keep one? Your thoughts on that picture overall?
Yeah, I think they'll keep both. I think they either win or lose it all, right? And you're right. The charges, I think, each carry a maximum of maybe 5 years. So they're not like super heavy charges, which I actually think goes to show how fair the Department of Justice is being to him. Because if you look at Donald Trump, for the Mar-a-Lago case, they had 39 counts of like all kinds of crazy stuff. And they're like, oh, he could spend 100 million years in prison, and they were making it so sensational. And this, it's like, no, they actually charged what he did. They did not overcharge this. And it's pretty straightforward. So, it's hard for prosecutors because they have to get a unanimous verdict. Comey just needs to find one juror who's sympathetic to him, who, doesn't want to follow the law because they're liberal or whatever. So the prosecutors are going to have to be really careful in their voir dire and in their jury selection to make sure that every single juror is willing to appropriately apply the law regardless of their political party. Because all it takes is one rogue juror to throw this whole thing off.
Excellent analysis thus far. Folks, we're on with Christina Bobb, former Trump attorney. She's had a career in national security, and she was also on television as an anchor on One American News, and she was the attorney of record when Mar-a-Lago was raided. She's written a book about it. It's called Defiant: Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. And amigos, we're going to continue our conversation with Christina Bobb straight ahead, getting into a little bit more of what this case looks like against James Comey and what this venue, how it helps, how it hurts, her thoughts on that when we return. Plus your thoughts and phone calls all across America. We're doing it live, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't touch that dial. It's Rich Valdés coming right back with Christina Bobb.
Big fan. Your impact is really big. Honored to be here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
All right, we are following breaking news. CBS has learned the Department of Justice has indicted former FBI Director James Comey. Prosecutors have indicted Comey on 2 counts. Details about those charges are forthcoming. For now, though, let's bring in CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rosen. He joins us on the phone here. And we're also looking at, Jake, a post here from Attorney General Pam Bondi that just came across saying, let me read this out loud to you. No one is above the law. Today's indictment reflects this Department of Justice's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people. We will follow the facts in this case. Jake, thank you again for joining us here on the phone. Can you talk to us more about what you're learning at this hour?
Sure. So CBS News can report that Comey was charged with one count of making false statements and one count of obstruction of justice, according to U.S. officials who are familiar with the indictment, which was just officially approved by a grand jury today. Obviously, this is a major escalation in President Trump's efforts to target political opponents. And President Trump made no secret of his willingness to remove a prosecutor in Virginia and appoint a former personal defense attorney of his to take over that job to bring these charges kind of across the finish line. If the charges had not been brought before next Tuesday, the statute of limitations, 5 years plus, would have elapsed, meaning that the Department of Justice couldn't have brought these charges. Obviously, you saw Attorney General Pam Bondi confirming these and mentioning misleading the American people. We don't necessarily know, obviously, what those charges of obstruction are related to, but presumably these false statements are around Comey's congressional testimony from 2020, in which he made false statements, at least the Trump Department of Justice is alleging, knowingly to senators who were questioning him about the FBI's handling of the investigation into the Trump campaign and also the Russian interference in the 2016 election.
So that's a little bit of a fake news report from CBS News, where he says that this is yet another installment of Trump's crusade against his political opponents. Instead of saying this is justice being done, our guest is Christina Bobb, former Trump attorney and the author of the book Defiant, Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. And you should probably add on to that title or do a part two, Christina Bobb, the left's ongoing bias in the media. What do you think of that report?
I don't remember them raising red flags or crying about all of the charges against Donald Trump or the January 6ers or the abuses at the state level with myself and some of the Trump electors or the Trump attorneys. The left has absolutely ravaged our justice system. And the battle cry was no one is above the law, no one is above the law, no one is above the law. Right. And so now that we're using it, they're all upset about it.
It only works one way.
Right.
Sad stuff. Now, I want to get your take on the venue here. He alluded to it in this thing saying that a former, and while that's a factual statement, I think it's better put that Trump hired somebody that he trusted, and this is somebody that worked for him in the past. And I think that's very legitimate. People do that all the time. But he did get rid of the prosecutor that was there, hoping to bring somebody that would be better. And I'm sure that person is capable and competent. But my thoughts are the grand jury, right? You can't control who's on the grand jury. Do you think this venue is going to provide a better grand jury? And we saw an indictment today, so okay, hopefully. Yeah. But now, what about the jury of his peers?
It's so close to DC. It's literally just across the river. Like you can go for a run and be in both states, on your short little run. So I don't know that it's going to make that much of a difference. I do think there is some weird psychological thing about physically being in DC and just like the crazy leftist ideology there, but I don't know that it's that much of a difference. Comey may try to move it into DC, which will, change a venue. But I don't know that it really matters. It's all kind of the same place.
So if it doesn't matter, is that to be interpreted as you're not confident in the outcome, that we're going to get deep state swamp people?
It's not, I wouldn't say that entirely. I mean, criminal trials, you're never guaranteed an outcome, especially when, you need a unanimous verdict. All it takes is one rogue juror and you can throw your whole case off. So that's always a concern. But no, I have confidence, especially because of the way they pled this indictment. It's so narrow that, I think they've got the facts lined up pretty clearly. They'll have a few hurdles, motions practice, and they'll have to argue the political aspects and all that. But I think if they can do a good job on their jury selection and ensure that every single juror is actually willing and capable to actually apply the law. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to be concerned about, but it's a concerning thing. You need all of the jurors to actually apply the law. as instructed by the court. And if they do that, I certainly think they can get a conviction.
All right. Well, going there, folks, and let me remind everybody, we're on with Christina Bobb, former attorney to President Trump, and the author of the book, Defiant, Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. Christina Bobb, every now and again, I don't know if your phone is moving, but your voice is trailing off, so just be cognizant of that so that the listeners can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And part B is, does Comey go to jail if we get this conviction that we're talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you compare it to what happened to Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, because the obstruction charge is somewhat similar, they went to jail for 4 months. So I would hope that he would get at least some jail time. I don't think it's going to be anything, life altering. I don't think it would be more than a couple of years, at least not with the charges as they're pled right now. They may change the indictment or add things to it that could create aggravating circumstances. But as things are, I think he would go. I just don't think it would be life altering.
Do you think there's a possibility where he ends up getting a conviction, but they say we're going to give you federal probation, and if you mess up, you even get a parking ticket, we're going to lock you up, and does he keep his law license?
Oh, he shouldn't. If he's convicted, absolutely not. He should absolutely lose that. I think if a court did that and just basically gave him a slap on the wrist with no consequences, I think America would be outraged, especially because of Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, who were not the FBI director.
Right.
And, they were locked up, and then you have all the January 6ers and the way that went down. I think people would absolutely lose their minds. So I don't think a court would do that, but who knows? I mean, everything's crazy right now.
Yeah, it really is an interesting time. Christina Bobb, let everybody know how they get a copy of your book and how they follow you online.
Yep, you can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. Defiant, Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare, forward by President Trump. You can visit my website, ChristinaBobb.com, and find me on Truth, X, and Instagram at Christina_Bobb.
Christina Bobb, B-O-B-B. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Amigos, we continue. Your thoughts, your calls, your reactions, and everything else straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdés with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdés with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And I always like to read somebody's lifestyle things. I was looking at this one here in the New York Post. Listen to this headline. Clutter makes you less attractive, survey finds. Clean up your act or risk killing your relationship. Now, I've known this since I was, 11 years old, 12 years old. And whatever first time I was around a girl and I was like, oh, let me clean this. Let me, hide my socks that are on the floor. And, I've been doing that my whole life as a single guy. Even when I was married, maybe that's where I slacked, right? Maybe that's why I'm not married anymore, leaving my socks all over the place. But ultimately, I think every guy knows that. If you're messy, girls don't like messy. But yet this is news today, and there's a survey confirming it. So I guess it's time for me to ask anybody out there, is this news to you, or did you not know that clutter makes you less attractive? According to this survey, survey says, right? Studies show. I would have thought everybody would have known that. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And let's hit the phones here. Let's go to Canton, Ohio, WNIR, checking in with Debbie. Debbie, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, I'm still laughing about the socks and stuff.
Yeah.
Funny,
it's
hilarious.
Crazy.
Oh, crazy, right? Yeah. Hey, I told you a while ago, Jim Bohannon was my draw into the nighttime radio.
Yeah.
And I said I was trying to learn to love you, and I'm still loving you, okay?
Oh, it's very kind of you. Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah. No, I listen to every word you say, and you're doing great. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, I am a Democrat. Okay, so
God will forgive
that's
you.
no surprise. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to know I really respect how you're trying to prose everything and get everything right.
Thank you.
What I'm worried about is the Israeli Palestine thing. I'm sorry. I got to bring it up.
Yeah.
Okay. It's sickening. It's very sickening to me. I think it's very serious what's going on there and how much America is being brought into that. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I don't think anybody likes the idea that people are being killed, that there's war going on. I believe on every side of this debate, everybody wants the killing to stop, except maybe for Hamas. I think Hamas has had so many opportunities to end this conflict, and they've opted to continue the conflict each and every time. And I think this is where, a lot of people stop, wanting to engage with Hamas, because on one side, they're trying to make a case for themselves, saying, look, we're just here trying to fight the evil, oppressive Israelis. But on the other side, when you've got the President of the United States, when you've got Netanyahu, when you've got everybody internationally, saying, look, we're willing to stop. Netanyahu would be forced to stop if Hamas said, look, we're waving the white flag. Here's your hostages. We don't want any more killing. He'd have to stop. But they don't do that. And I think this is part of the grand issue here, is that I think Hamas is just dedicated to the obliteration of Israel, whether they can pull it off or not. They believe in their mission, which is to eradicate Israel from the map. And as long as that's their mission and they remain committed to it, I don't think we're going to see any improvement on that front, sadly, right? Because I'm with you. I don't want to see any more killing. I know Trump's made that very clear. He doesn't want to see any more killing. Ultimately, killing is bad. And it sounds rudimentary, but it's the bottom line. Debbie, thank you for your kind words. And, of course, thank you for your call and for your concern. I appreciate it. And let's see. I want to go to the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia, WCHS. Check in with Nate. Nate, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdés.
Hey, Rich. Great topic tonight. I don't usually listen to the radio, but I happened to be driving home late tonight and got stuck in traffic, so I was trying to find a traffic report and caught the story. So I've got a little bit of an interesting history. I was the Uranium One whistleblower back in 2018. I was working at the FBI when Comey was director, walked out with 458 pages of classified documents, took them to the IG, Michael Horowitz, because it indicated that Comey and other senior members of the FBI were involved in obstruction of justice and covering up Hillary Clinton's crimes. And I had all of those documents. They were validated and verified by Michael Horowitz himself. He saw it as a national security matter of urgent concern and authorized me to take him to both the House and Senate Intel committees. Unfortunately, it took a whole year to get through the process, and by the time that I finished, about 4 months later, the Democrats took control of the House. Adam Schiff took control of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and I got raided a month after that.
Somehow, I was waiting for the punchline. I was waiting for, and what did they do to you? right? Because that's how it always goes, Nate. And again, this is not a planned call. You're not an invited guest. Like you said, you heard the show. But it doesn't surprise me in the least, because this is sadly how the deep state operates.
So I ended up, basically spending 5 years with the threat of an indictment over my head. Of course, I was never indicted. They basically just hung on to all of my electronic devices for, that 5-year period. There one agent in particular who was involved in the investigation or involved in the raid on my home took it upon his personal interest to, go on a witch hunt after me. The raid on my home was very similar to the Mar-a-Lago raid. They basically, came and 16 agents showed up at my house. Now, mind you, I was already a protected whistleblower under the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act. And the Daily Caller, if anybody wants to look up the story, they can look up whistleblower Dennis Nathan Kane. That's my full legal name that was in the article. But the Daily Caller broke the story, and they followed up with a FOIA to the Maryland magistrate to ask a singular question that their lawyers, crafted to be, one of those questions that they couldn't deny because it could interfere with an ongoing investigation. And the question was the judge notified that I was a protected whistleblower before she signed off on the search warrant? Well, a Clinton-appointed federal judge put a seal on that answer, and then she put a seal on her. She put a seal on her justification for putting a seal on that answer. So I think we know what the answer is.
Unbelievable, Nate. Well, look, Godspeed to you. I'm glad you avoided jail time. We'll see what happens with your former boss, Comey, and how that goes. But really, really crazy stuff. And Uranium One, that's a whole other thing that these guys skated by on. Nate, thank you for the call.
Yes,
Shout out to you guys in West Virginia and WCHS. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you'll catch the show again. Amigos, I got to take a pause right here. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdés keeping you company. Looking forward to chatting with you. Let's hit the phones. Let's go to Frank in Evergreen, Montana. KOFI. Frank, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Yeah, I just have a simple 7-word question, open question to President Trump. And as a professed Christian as he is, as he said, can he explain the difference between weakness and meekness?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I would say I think President Trump does this on a regular basis because I think the idea of being meek, right, is one that when people interview and the media is interviewing President Trump and they ask him these gotcha questions and he responds with, I think we need to stop people from dying. We have to stop the death, right? It always cuts through the noise. And that is truly where I think his heart is, in peace, in true peace, in making a deal and getting along so that we can do well together. And weakness, I think he's far from it, right? I think everybody knows mess around too much and, we'll send all those bombers your way. So I think he walks that tightrope pretty well between weakness and meekness. But and always on the meekness side, if that makes any sense. Frank, thank you for the call. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night, and God bless you, America. I'm coming back for another hour, and I'm looking forward to it. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdés. Don't go anywhere. Live
from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdés, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdés.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdés, Valdés with an S, at Rich Valdés on all of the social media. Welcome back. Another hour of programming, live and national. 7 minutes past the top of the hour this Thursday night. When I was a kid, we used to call it Thirsty Thursdays. Now it's Throwback Thursday. Here's the phone number if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to remind you, we are live right now and national all across the country. So if you want to join the program tonight, I encourage you to call. I love speaking with new callers and hearing your perspective on the issues. And there's a lot of issues, right? The issues of the day are plenty. Of course, James Comey being indicted earlier today in Virginia. For obstruction of justice, lying to Congress is the alleged charge during a cross-examination in a Senate hearing by Senator Ted Cruz. His answers didn't match Mr. McCabe's answers, and it was deemed that it was Mr. Comey that was the one peddling the falsehoods back then. That was 2020. And the Department of Justice bringing the indictment against him for 2 felony counts of lying, false statements, and obstruction. So that's the story on Comey, and we'll keep getting your reactions to that and any additional commentary on that. He, of course, responded to this saying, look, he knew it was par for the course when you're defending America and dealing with El Trumpito and blah, 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 and just going down that rabbit hole. But I think by and large, people know who James Comey is, and the facts are likely going to speak for themselves. One thing I've seen thus far with this particular Department of Justice is that the cases that they're bringing, they seem certain in bringing them. Right, they're not doing what we saw in the previous administration, where they would, go all over the place, like Varsity Blues or any of those things, overcharging people, going out on a limb. They don't care if they lose because they were really trying you in the court of public opinion. I think this is truly a case that's based on the facts, and we'll see how it plays out. I am hopeful that we'll have a fair outcome here. Anyway, that's that one. Some other news. There's in these off years, right? New York has their mayoral election. New Jersey has a gubernatorial election, and so does Virginia. And on that front, I wanted to give you an update. The police unions police union put their support behind Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey. He's an assemblyman running for governor in New Jersey. And he's run before, made some good progress. He's been endorsed by President Trump. And he's running against a woman named Mikey Sherrill. Now, this Mikey Sherrill, she's a current congresswoman, and her name's Mikey, but she is a woman. And her campaign has been, I'm going to say, lackluster. Truly, she hasn't been a very solid candidate. I think she's a pretty effective politician, in so much as she's good at being quick on her feet and trading barbs and going on attack. However, she has several good moments out there, not good for her, but good for me, of her getting caught off guard, almost dumbfounded by Charlemagne the God asking her a question on The Breakfast Club about $7 million in income that she made. And he's like, this happened while you were on the whatever committee. And she's like, I don't know, I'll have to ask my husband. If she wasn't guilty, she made herself look really guilty. And now she has a service record with the United States military, and now that's being called into question. And, I guess the October surprise came about a week early. But I don't think it looks great for Mikey Sherrill. And why do I say that? Poll just came out in New Jersey. New Jersey is one of the most left-wing states in America, really. It really is. I'd say we're right there with California and Washington, and maybe even Oregon. The poll shows Jack Ciattarelli, a Republican assemblyman, and Mikey Sherrill, Democrat congresswoman, neck and neck, 43% to 43%. I got to tell you, in a state where Democrats are, I think it's something like 8-1 to Republicans, at least in fundraising in that sense, and by registration, it's probably, closer to 3-1 in most areas. And let me tell you, to be neck and neck with a Republican, you're running a pretty bad campaign. And that means things are looking really good for Jack Ciattarelli. So kudos to him and his team on trying to get this thing across the finish line. And I'm pretty confident, honestly, that they will. This is as good a shot as any to pull this off. And I think America's ready for that. America's looking for a new direction, and oftentimes people, when they get sick and tired of being sick and tired, they go, you know what, I'm going the other way. I'm just going the other way. Whatever it is. This isn't working, so I'm going that way. And that's what they do, right? And that's why you get Democrats that'll hold their nose and vote Republican. And I think in this case, they're holding their nose to not vote for the Democrat. They're like, I'm gladly going this way. It's what we saw with Trump as well. So, interesting times. Also, New York City, Mamdani. This Mamdani, I think people are starting to see him for who he is and what he is. All this money that he wants to spend on transgender surgery, right? He wants to be able to help kids that want to have a sex change operation. He wants to be able to give them money straight through the public school. At least that's how I understood that proposal. And we've talked about it on this program. We even had guests commenting on it. How insane is that? So I want to be mayor, and I'm going to appoint a chancellor. By the way, you know who he's appointing as chancellor? I'll give you a guess. All right, time's up. Jamal Bowman. That's right, Fire Drill Bowman himself, the guy who pulled the fire alarm the day that they were voting on a measure in Congress, and he didn't want them to vote on this measure, so he pulled a fire alarm, got caught on camera pulling the fire alarm, and then said, oh, my bad, I thought that was, I was just trying to go through that door. I didn't know the alarm would go off. Liar, you had to pull an actual alarm to make it go off. This guy's so full of it. And guess what happened to him? Who wants to guess? Gold star for you if you get it right. Jamal Bowman did not get reelected, right? He was an upcoming member of the squad. He was trying to impress his boss, AOC, all out crazy. And guess what? He failed. So he's out, just like Jasmine Crockett is going to be out. These squad crazy left-wing Democrats that are really ruining it for the rest of the Democrats, right? The Democrats that are not talking about abolishing ICE and defunding the police. There's some out there, but it's guys like Bowman that are crushing them, crushing their own people, their own colleagues, because they realize, I can't get elected on this policy. Not everybody lives in New York or D.C. or Detroit, right? There are places where they will not accept your city becoming the murder capital of America. Believe it or not, that's a thing. Some people say we want clean streets, we want safe streets. We don't want the smoke, we don't want the drama, we don't want the mess. And that hurts Democrats. These crazy left-wing Democrats are hurting their colleagues. So anyway, that's a little bit on what's going on there. Curtis Sliwa is again the person I put my support behind, and we're 40 days from Election Day. Curtis Sliwa continuing to pick up more support as he goes away. A true grassroots campaign, literally shaking hands, kissing babies, meeting people. There's a little bit of an online component, but in real life, Sliwa's out there, and everybody who's ever been to New York knows if you need to get from World Trade Center to Washington Heights, the fastest way to do it is not the FDR or the West Side Highway. No, it's the subway. The subway will get you there faster. And Curtis stays on the subways, meeting people. Every train car he's in, he's campaigning. And I think those dividends are going to pay off. So keep your eyes peeled for what's going on there. Now, I want to talk about President Trump issuing a glowing endorsement of Javier Milei, the president of Argentina. President Milei has done a remarkable job. He ran a campaign beating up communists, beating up socialists, destroying the left. He took it to them and he won. And now he's working on fixing his economy. So when we come back, we're going to get some reaction to the improvements in the Argentinian economy, the concerns that they face moving forward, and so much more, plus your calls. We are live and national. I see we've got, Paul, Herschel, Tommy, Tony, Tim, Springfield, Montreal, Charleston, Arkansas, and more on the line. We're going to get to your calls momentarily. You know the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
I wanted to meet with the president of Argentina, and we both wanted to meet with friends. He's done a fantastic job, and I'm doing something that I don't often do. I'm giving a full endorsement to him. We just endorsed him for president. As you know, he has a race coming up, and I'm sure he's going to do well, but now I think this hopefully assures it. And to the people of Argentina, we're backing him 100%. We think he's done a fantastic job. He, like us, inherited a mess, and what he's done to fix it is good, and Scott is working with their country so that they can get good debt and all of the things that you need to make Argentina great again. So it's an honor for me to endorse the president and the future president of Argentina. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's you. That wasn't bad. Now we can get out of here.
Thank you. Are you going to help bail out Argentina?
That, of course, President Trump making his endorsement of Argentinian President Javier Milei, who, again, as you may or may not know, this is Argentina, right? Don't cry for me, Argentina. That same Argentina. That, of course, the cry from the play Evita, who was a real-life commie sympathizer, right? Evita Perón. And will this country go back to Peronism? Is their socialist tendency going to come out of this, or will they embrace the free markets and try to deal with the austere position that President Milei has taken? I, for one, appreciate the measures he's taken. I think it's the right way to go. He's tightening his belt. It's something, quite frankly, we could probably use in the United States, although I think it's a little bit more difficult here. But either way, nothing comes easy. But this conversation is going to be focused on Argentina and President Milei and why President Trump decided to endorse him. So I want to get into this with the president of Ginn Economic Consulting. He is the former chief economist of the White House Office of Management and Budget during President Trump's first term. Dr. Vance Ginn is with us. Vance, welcome back, sir.
Hey, Rich, it's a pleasure with you.
Thank you. Likewise. And yeah. I want to dig into this because I'm a big fan of Milei because he's always brought the truth to the rhetoric, as you know, as just like we see in New York. Not to get too off topic here, but you've got this guy Zoran Mamdani in New York, and he paints this picture. Well, we got to make New York City more affordable for everybody, and of course, everybody who wants to save money hears that and they love hearing it. But the obvious big issue here is he's proposing taxing the wealthiest New Yorkers, which is clearly going to lead to an exodus of high earners and, you know, create a decline in tax revenues. He's talking about taking over grocery stores in New York City, or even creating government-run grocery stores. So these types of things are, in my opinion, just bad for New York. And that's the situation that I feel Argentina was headed in. They opted to go with Javier Milei. And he's taken them away from that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Rich, no, I think you hit the nail on the head on many of those issues. You know, Argentina was in a bad situation. I mean, they're running hyperinflation. over 100% inflation month over month, and it just massive. And now, yes, it's still too high, especially for our standards. But considering it's closer to 20 to 30% now year over year, it's much better than where it was. And that's been helping people. I mean, he's been able to deregulate a lot in Argentina, along with cutting spending. And while some would say the austerity has created an economic kind of crisis there, what it has done has deflated the areas of the economy that were being bloated by this excessive amount of government spending that comes on the back of their taxpayers. And so sometimes, this amount of shock, if you will, to the shock doctrine, if you will, given the austerity, the deregulation, and other things, it will create some uncertainty for a while in the economy, like we're seeing now there. But it will come back even better and stronger later on because of those key reforms that he's doing now. But it's certainly showing up in the polls right now. The Wall Street Journal just had a good piece on it, and I think he's got an uphill battle. But I think with President Trump, coming in and endorsing him, which, as he said there, he doesn't usually do, hopefully that'll be a good sign for Milei in this election.
Yeah. So let's take this, I guess, step by step here, because I think that it's important to look at them as a case study, because it either it works or it doesn't, right? I mean, there's a lot on the line here. It's not just an economy, and I know you're an economist, but to me, it's really the whole package. He was out there as a crusader for the culture, a crusader for the free market, a crusader for really kind of conservative principles, and he's made, like you said, some gains. They're not out of the dark, but to me, it's important that he wins, because if he doesn't win, then the left will just turn around and say, "See, told you these guys were a bunch of clowns. They couldn't deliver," and it may. It has the potential for a political backfire. I don't see that in his future. I think he's got his foot on the gas, but that is the worst case scenario. So let's go ahead.
No, and Rich, and just to hit on your point earlier too about Madami and what's going on in New York and everything else. I mean, we have clear examples of what's working well in the United States and what's not. People are fleeing New York. People are fleeing California, and they're moving to places like Texas and Florida, Tennessee, and others that are going a more conservative direction. And so, yes, I think this is a terrible play. Not only if Milei loses there, it kind of slows down the progress that's being made in this free market sort of direction, but it could also indicate to Americans, where's the future of our country as well, especially when you have these socialists that are out there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Folks, we're on with Vance Ginn. Vance Ginn is the president of Ginn Economic Consulting, and he was the chief economist in the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, in the Trump 1.0 White House. And Vance, we've got about a minute to go, so I'm just going to, I don't want to start something I can't finish, but I guess we'll set the stage for when we come back. There's a couple of points that I know you've made about your admiration for Javier Milei and why you think it makes sense for other people to admire him, but also the cautions that come with that, because sometimes, good ideas don't always play out so well in very hostile political environments, despite the goodness of the idea. So I want to get into that. I also want to talk about the dollarization, the monetary reform that's going on there. And then maybe a little bit of how that coincides with crypto and how we're seeing crypto kind of crystallize in places like El Salvador. So stick with me, folks. We're coming right back with Dr. Vance Ginn, president of Ginn Economic Consulting and former chief economist in the Trump White House Office of Management and Budget. Don't go anywhere.
Look at Rich Valdés. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
Milei's party lost big in the Buenos Aires provincial election, and markets reacted immediately. The peso weakened against other currencies, and stocks tumbled as the country's political and economic future was thrown into doubt.
The Argentina dollar bonds plunging the most in 3 years. That's after a provincial election is now threatening to undermine President Javier Milei's national economic agenda.
By some measures, President Milei has pulled off a near economic miracle, bringing Argentina's inflation rate down from almost 300% year over year in 2024 to just over 30% today. But he got there by imposing austerity measures that hit the country's citizens. David Kim is CEO of Argentina-based textile company Amsud.
The history of Argentina, there was always political problems during election times, and this time is no different. Our employees are very concerned. Some are frightened because the last 2 years we had to lay off 100 employees from 450. We are now 350. It was very difficult.
The problem that you have with the kind of reforms Milei's been putting in place is putting a lot of economic pressure on anybody from the middle class down. A lot of these austerity measures that were imposed, in particular, were hitting the kind of voters that Milei was able to grab to win the election in the first place. And that's the tricky part of it. They were willing to take that pain, but now they want to see something come together for them.
So that is a report on what's going on in Argentina. Again, Javier Milei making strides, but is it enough? I suspect that it is, but again, it is South America. You never know. People become very fickle over there. So we continue our conversation. Our guest is Vance Ginn. He is the former chief economist in the Office of Management and Budget in the White House during the first Trump administration, and he's president of Ginn Economic Consulting. And Vance Ginn, I know that we've discussed some of the threats that they face in Argentina. I guess I want to either shift and continue a little bit here. Basically, this comes down to me. I think it comes down to dollars and cents. And while it's nice to admire what President Milei has done, you say you admire his work, but you caution, the future moving forward. Tell us more.
Yeah. I do because, well, a couple of things. One is what will happen in this next election, right? And between now and then. The other thing is, sometimes you get these more radical changes that happen, and then they'll stop and they'll try to win re-election versus continuing down that path of what the real reforms that are needed to make their country stronger, to move more towards free market capitalism and away from socialism where they've been. And that includes dollarization and things of that nature that I think could happen over time. But I'm just concerned that some of these things we see on the surface, and then those changes aren't made long term, and so they don't see the real reforms, and then there's pushback against capitalism to say that capitalism somehow failed, or this deregulation and the spending cuts were what caused the problem, instead of understanding that the government was creating the problems to begin with all that excessive spending and money creation, and that created inflation and the debt and everything else. And so we got to make sure we take away the good examples that's happened under Milei and not look at some of these other issues that are going on, because I do think that they will be much stronger and better off with Milei's sort of policies moving in the future.
So let's talk about dollarization, because obviously they're in hyperinflation. Their money isn't worth what it's printed on. How do we get out of that situation if not introducing another currency, like let's just say the U.S. dollar, or creating, pegging to a stable coin like crypto?
Yeah, I mean, those are options that should be on the table for sure. I mean, the dollarization, I think, would definitely give them more credibility with their currency, and the basis it's pegging it to the dollar at some rate that they determine, and that will allow for there to be that additional backing from the dollar in the United States and what's going on there. So that will increase credibility. And that usually, typically, historically, will allow for lower inflation and start to stabilize things in the economy. The trade-off is that you lose some of your ability to run your, monetary policy or having your currency run as strong as it was previously, right? Because you're giving up some of that to the United States and to the Fed. And so there's some trade-offs, but I think at least for a while that would help to stabilize them and put them in the right direction.
In a situation like this one in Argentina, would there be a trade-off here if they went to the dollar? Because it seems like they're in over their heads with the Argentine currency.
Yeah. Well, I think they would be better off for sure. Yes. At least initially, and then maybe they go back, right, to the peso
If it makes sense
later
to go
on.
back, right?
Right. But at least right now, I think it would be. And even Milei, before, when he was running for his last election, he was pushing for there to dollarize. I think they ran into some speed bumps along the way. Other things started coming up, and so they kind of took their eye off of where they were headed with that. But I think they need to bring that back front and center, given their debt issues and their repayments that they're having problems with right now.
In a situation like this, and again, this is just, my own naivete, but if I were president and having to tackle this, the questions I'd be asking would be like, is there a benefit to going with the dollar, especially on the heels of an endorsement from the President of the United States, to having a gold standard, pegging their Argentine currency to gold? Is there an advantage to doing that, a disadvantage? Is there even an appetite for gold-backed currency?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm definitely in favor of gold standard compared to our fiat standard and the standard that most places have nowadays, for sure. And even, Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, I think should be a part of that process. But I think all options should be on the table, given the financial disaster that they've had on their hands right now in Argentina. And that wasn't because of Milei, right? That was already going on. He's
their
trying to
economy
fix it.
collapsed some years ago.
Correct. Exactly right. And so I think right now is the time to maybe try out some things. One of the things I think you and I have talked about in the past, Rich, was, I'm actually for free banking. I would like to see less government involvement in the banking system, allow them to issue their own currency. I mean, there's a lot of options that Milei could run with right now, and I hope he will, and hopefully he'll win his next election, and then that will give him even a bigger chance to come in and make some key reforms in the monetary part of it as well. Because as we know, Rich, too much money created, that's what creates inflation, and that's what they've been doing for a long time.
Do you think there's an option here to do what President Bukele did in El Salvador with Bitcoin?
Well, I think there is. I mean, I don't see why Milei wouldn't look at having a basket of different currencies to bounce off of. Milton Friedman wrote a good book called Money Mischief, where he talked about not just gold, but silver-backed. And that in the mid-19th century in America, we had two, like a bimetallic standard, silver and gold. And that way you're not too dependent on one or the other. So why not have it a crypto and Bitcoin and others, and that way you have more things to bounce off of as you go through different periods in your economy.
Yeah, I'm with that. And I would support a stable where it's just like that. A couple of different cryptos, silver and gold. So that to me is very solid. Especially I was just looking at that stuff today. Gold is almost $3,800 an ounce.
Oof.
Silver is $45 and climbing.
Crazy,
I don't know
Record
how
highs.
quickly. Yeah, right. I don't know how quickly we get to a $50 silver, but or a $4,000 or even pray tell a $5,000 gold. But while that's interesting for the gold investor, and I do have a jewelry business, but the other side of that is it doesn't say a lot of good things for the dollar, and to me it paints a picture of we've got to do something and do it quickly. So lots to continue the next time we talk. Vance Ginn, let everybody know how they get in touch with you if they want to learn more.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Rich. It's always a pleasure talking with you. And everyone could check me out at vanceginn.com, VanceGinn.com. I'm also posting a lot on X about these issues. And my Substack newsletter, which is where I posted this commentary on Milei, is at vanceginn.substack.com, where you can subscribe complimentary there as well. So, but always thank you for having me on, Rich.
Thank you, folks. Check them out at vanceginn.com. That's Ginn with 2 N's. I appreciate you coming on, brother. Godspeed to you. Talk again soon.
Sounds good. You too, sir.
You bet. And amigos, we continue our conversation with you, the American people. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdés with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdés with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Open Phone America is happening right now. Your calls. I want to go to Highland, Arkansas, KSAR. Talk to Herschel. Herschel, you're on with Rich Valdés.
Mr. Valdés with an S?
Yes, sir.
I would like to pose a question. If the Kimmel and cohort are the free speech advocates they proclaim to be, where were they when a Mr. Brett Weinstein, what I would describe as a classical liberal, was positing that ivermectin was a popular solution during COVID? Dr. Peter McCullough, MD, was saying there were alternate solutions that were not the vaccine. And let's never mind Mr. Trump saying that hydroxychloroquine was a possible alternate.
Yeah, and you can add now Secretary Bobby Kennedy, right? RFK Jr. to that list. He was also thrown off of Twitter for taking a position antithetical to the one that they had. And you're right. Listen, there was so little talk about free speech when we were throwing people off Twitter. In fact, I think what they were saying was, it's a private company. They can do what they want. It's not the public square. You know, I mean, the left has done this. And listen, I think sometimes you'll see that on the right. That's really not a left-right thing all the time. A lot of times that's just a rhetorical thing, and rhetoric exists all over the spectrum. But you're right, in terms of this particular argument, where were they? Where were they screaming for free speech? I was screaming for it then. I'm still screaming for it now. Like I said, if I agreed with Ted Cruz that if, in fact, the government was going out of their way to send a threat to these affiliates, that was wrong. I agreed. It's not a road we should go down. One reason I agree, because if we do it and we like the outcome, the left is going to do it right back to us. And you always have to run that test. Now, the information I got from David Bozell, president of the Media Research Center, he says that it was the other way around. The affiliates went to Chairman Carr saying, hey, look, our people are, up in arms about this stuff. Can you help? And he made the comments that he made. So either way, I mean, I guess we have it happened, and we're in a good spot for that, I think, right? I think we had a good discussion on free speech. I think Jimmy Kimmel understands where he's at. I think he's on 60 less stations. And again, that's not necessarily my goal to see him on less stations, but it's a reaction from the market. And I always appreciate any reaction from the market, because that's ultimately all we have, right? If the show is good, more people will listen. If the show's not good, less people will listen. And that's the reality that we live in, which is why I've never bought into the DEI or to the racism or this or that or diversity or anything like that. Doesn't matter, right? You could be the blackest guy, the whitest guy. You could be like me, Puerto Rican. If I'm Puerto Rican and I suck, nobody's going to buy ads, and that's a wrap. No more show. You've got to be able to deliver. So I think Kimmel got a realization on how the free market works, and hopefully that helps make sense of things. Brother, thank you for your call. Shout out to Herschel in KSAR. I think that was the station he was on. Forgive me if I got that wrong. Let us continue. I want to go to David. David's calling us from Meridian, Mississippi, WALT. Go right ahead.
Hey, you say you're Puerto Rican?
Yes, I say that.
Well, I'd say actually you're all American to me. I mean, I've been listening to you for
Puerto
a long
Ricans
time,
are
and
Americans. That's like saying I'm a New Yorker or I'm a New Jerseyan, right? Puerto Rico's pretty much the equivalent of a state. It's not another country. So, it's like saying you're a Mississippian. But thank you, David. I appreciate it. I appreciate the call. We're going to take a quick pause right here. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. America at Night with Rich Valdés.
All right, to the phones we go. Let's go to Stephen, Kansas City, Missouri. KTRS, as I'm told. Stephen, go right ahead.
Well, hey, Rich, how are you doing tonight? I just called to sing your praises. I wanted to tell you, don't beat yourself up about your dirty socks. I've dated a couple of girls who were very sloppy.
Yeah, that reminds me. Yeah, absolutely. There's a funny meme on the on Instagram or whatever you like to watch, where the guy's like shaving and he puts the razor down on his side of the sink, and the wife comes and she's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Don't make a mess," right? And she like beating him up about it. And then the camera pans over to her side, and there's like 47 makeup bags and 67 different brushes to apply makeup and all these feminine products and creams and all that. And the irony is, she's complaining about you got to keep it clean, keep your stuff neat. And it's like a bomb hit it on the other side, like an Ulta store blew up. So, yeah, very, very good point. I appreciate that. Stephen in Kansas City, Missouri, KTRS. We got to keep it tight. We got to keep it moving. Speed round over here. And the clock is ticking. Where do we go? Hold on. I got one more. Tim, Springfield, Illinois, WTAX. Go right ahead.
Speed round. Okay, Roseanne Barr, she should get her job back and be getting some back pay because she got let go for telling a off-color joke, which I thought was very funny. And Jimmy Kimmel can be back on. He should be back on and made whole.
Yeah, listen, I always say you leave it to the people in charge, right? The customers are the viewers, and if they want to see that happen, they will make it happen. I get your point, and this business is tricky that way. This is why I never celebrate the demise of anybody on any side of the aisle, because this business is a tough one. But I hear what you're saying. Roseanne Barr, I think they did her dirty. They did her dirty because at the time it was cool to attack Trump people. Now Trump is in the White House. Trump has a lot of very competent and very capable people in his administration. You can see that evidenced by just almost any media interaction he has. He gives his response. He sits back, kind of steeples his hands, and then he'll just say, "So-and-so, do you want to talk to that Pam, Marco?" Right? And he picks any one of his lieutenants to get in there because he trusts them. And he knows that they're competent and that they're confident and they're able to communicate clearly. And I think that's why you're seeing him crank out so much production from this administration, because he's really picked the right team. Tim, thank you for your call. I really appreciate it. Let me see. What can I do here? Well, Joe, I have less than a minute. Hopefully that's enough. Salem, Arkansas. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I want to say that Comey was a good choice for the first charges. He caused a lot of trouble for the president. And your voir jury selection is the most important part, and they better do.
Okay. I'm sorry about that, Joe. Yes, I agree. This is going to get tricky. Hopefully it's not that tricky. We'll keep everybody posted. A shout out to KSAR in Arkansas. All right, amigos. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdés.